The first thing that you should know about async await is that by default, a promise which fails but isn't handled by any kind of error handler will fail silently. So that's never a good thing. So instead, what you can do in Chrome or Node, and I'm a Node guy, then you can put this little line at the top of your files. I put it at the top of my promise library files. And now when this fails, you'll get an exception thrown and your program will crash, which in my book is a lot better. If you don't want your program to crash, you could do something like this with the normal promise mechanism, or you can add a try-catch block around the await. This is the old way to do it with promises. So at the beginning, you'll often see that you have to kind of create a variable that's scoped to the function, so the variable will exist within the promise chain below. Then the next thing happens is the promise is called, and then whatever comes after the chain is called, and then whatever is in the middle is called. And so the order of the code, the way it's written and the way it's read, does not match the order in which it's executed, which is obviously suboptimal. Enter async await. This happens first. There's no awkward scoping. This happens second. This happens third. One of the things that I discovered you want to stay away from is unnecessary awaits. So this is supposed to be a library function with an unnecessary await in it. And now every time out here in the main function, that library function is called, there's unnecessary blocking happening. When instead, the better route is there's no awaits in the library function. There's one await to do the setup out here in main. And then all of these can run in parallel. And this is a nice handy line which will block until every promise is settled or resolved. And the nice thing about this is that the order is preserved. So the result of P1 gets stuck in value 1, P2 value 2, P3 value 3, and so forth. A nice utility is being able to sleep. Sometimes, especially in testing, you're setting up some kind of decoupled remote something or another. And there's no way to know exactly when it's done, at least not easily. But you know, maybe it takes about 3 seconds. And so in your test, you can say, before you go on to test, wait 4 seconds or however long you want it. And the last pattern I want to show you is in a main function, for example. We are making an async call right here, but we're not awaiting it right away because we don't need it right away. We're deferring it until later. In the meantime, we're doing some work. Might take a while. Then by the time you get back to calling the await function, and you can see these two variables are the same. By the time you get around to awaiting this, then it's already actually done, and you're not going to block here, at least in some cases. So this is a little summary. I've got a little blog post that kind of has the same stuff if you guys want to look at it. And that's it. Any questions? Yeah.
Did you find a way in order to break the promise await async chain? If one method's async, then the next method above that has to be async, and then one above that has to be async. You found a way to prevent that, or to get something to run synchronously?
I haven't noticed that problem. I think all you have to do is declare the function that uses await as async, and then you can call that from another function that isn't declared as async. Unless I'm missing something, I don't think that's I haven't run into that problem, so I don't think that's an issue. Any other questions? Yeah.
Do you feel like this has made it easier to kind of understand like promise chains and like how that whole async versus sync flow works?
I think it doesn't really explain how the low-level stuff is working, but it's much easier to program from a high-level perspective. Your code ends up being way cleaner, easier to read. I've been using it for several months, and I would not want to go back to plain promises.
The
especially with Babel 6, how they modularize the whole thing.
Yeah. How does that work in other browsers outside of modern browsers?
I've just experienced in Node, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
What does it get turned into when it compiles down?
So there's a Babel runtime library which is called in at runtime instead of at transpile time, and that does some